Okay, Samantha Wood, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Thank you for.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, I'm very interested. So you run FooDiva, and you have always done a great job of like really doing the kind of content that isn't done on food, which is you're just really diving in. You have such a depth of knowledge. Your reviews are always paid for by yourself. You're not beholden, because I think a lot of people don't know that in the UAE, most of the food reviewing, most of it is, it's provided by the venue. So you really can be very honest.
Yeah.
And you've been doing it for how, like, when did you start FooDiva, and just tell me what like pushed you into the starting of it?
I actually launched it in February 2011. So that's coming up to 13 years, actually. My background is, or was, I should say, public relations in the hospitality industry. So I moved to Dubai from London. I'm half Cypriot, but I was studying and working in the UK. And I moved here in 99 to escape fashion PR and start working in hospitality. Public relations. I worked for a couple of agencies and then joined Hilton in their marketing department, and then corporate communications for a wider region, Middle East and Africa. And then I decided, sort of 6 years in, I'd had enough of the corporate PR world, wanted to do my own thing, harbored this idea. I've always, the sort of back of my mind, wanted to be a restaurant critic, but knew here that by working for someone else, my honesty and integrity would be compromised. I mean, at the time, as you know, it was the National, your old stomping ground, and Time Out that didn't accept invitations in return for reviews. So I decided, my ex-boss, who has been a mentor to me all along, suggested, well, why don't you see what they're doing in the US? Anyway, I actually traveled to Japan and China, started this very amateur food blog, loved it, came back here and thought, right, okay, I'm going to try and make this into a business. And I was very anti-social media. I was only on LinkedIn at the time. I was forced into Facebook and then Twitter when it launched. But I launched this, very amateur restaurant review blog that has since morphed organically into foodiva.net, the restaurant review website that it is today. But right from day one, I was adamant that I would have a no invitation, no freebies policy. So essentially, if there's no receipt, there's no review. That's how best to describe it. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
And I love that you built it. Like, I feel like you're so prescient, because 2011, you're building this, and it's essentially a blog, but everyone else is flocking to social media, and you're like, I don't want to do social media. And how many times did people tell you had to be doing tons of social media?
Well, listen, I did go on social media. In the end, I went on Facebook, I went on Twitter. Actually, Twitter was game changing for me. And I think in its heyday, it was very valuable. And I still have a strong following there, even though I don't dabble in it as much. And then obviously Instagram came. But I was very clear right from the beginning about building a database, an email database. Because as you know, Ann Marie, we spend all this time on social media, but we do not own those channels. We can get hacked, anything can happen, whereas we own our emails. Yes, some people might unsubscribe, some people might leave, but ultimately we own that database. So right from day one, I've cultivated that. And the website has been my main focus, using social media to sort of expand the message and grow the following, but bringing them back to the website and to the email and the newsletter. So that's something that I felt very strong about then, and still very much do. And I'm very grateful that I have that, because I think it's a real shame to spend all this time on something that you don't actually own.
But I think that's why you're prescient, because everyone got carried away with doing that. And I know, anytime you look at marketing people, they're always telling you what you have to be doing. And I just feel like you had a real sense of purpose. And now it's coming back to, oh, you need to grow your email list. You have to have your email list. So you must be feeling kind of like, I know.
Going back to actually something that you said about the blog, I moved away from calling FooDiva a blog because it was at the time, and I use the term bloggers are blaggers. And I just felt that we started off where blogs, on the back of sort of the success of like the Huffington Post in the US, was a real sort of buzzword, very trendy, to sort of moving away into sort of websites that are magazines, really. So essentially, I call foodiva.net a website. If someone calls it a blog, so be it. But I just feel that there are so many blogs and Instagrammers now out there that I needed to differentiate from that.
And how has the business grown and changed, and what have you added over the years?
So in the beginning, it was very much the website that earned revenue from traditional revenue streams, like sort of ads, sponsorship. There is a little bit of sponsorship still involved now. And then it sort of morphed into social media, sponsored posts. But I've backed away from that in the last few years. Even at the beginning, I was very reluctant to take on sponsored social media because I felt it went against my editorial policy. And frankly, the brands that had the budgets were not the brands that I wanted to work with. And I've turned down a lot of money. Frankly, I'd be a millionaire now if I accepted everything that came my way. So perhaps I'm not the best business person, really. But what I did come up with a few years ago, and this is back in 2014, was I created a dining experience concept called Dine Around Dubai. And then that morphed into, a few years later, into something called Three Chefs Dinner. So essentially, I organize exclusive chef-led dining experiences that are ticketed. They sell out within hours. I'm very, very grateful for that. And then on the back of that, I also organize bespoke experiences for private clients or corporates. Some of these are behind the scenes. There's no sort of coverage on it. Some there is. So I have morphed into this event organizer at the same time, but I have lots of different hats. Yeah.
So let's talk about this dining scene. You mainly focus on Dubai.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
So how has the overall dining scene grown up in the more than a decade that you've been doing this?
Well, when I first started, it was very much all about imported brands, celebrity chef concepts, the likes of what we see here at Atlantis, and Atlantis still continues to showcase, but it's moved away from that to this amazing, talented, homegrown dining scene. And by homegrown, I mean locally developed, Dubai-born concepts, not necessarily Emirati or Middle Eastern, but concepts that are created here by chefs based here full-time, not a chef that is paid an annual royalty fee and that pops into Dubai 2 to 3 times a year, according to their contract. And I feel now we have more of those than the imported concepts, which is a indicator of a very matured dining scene. So I think we now can compete with other cities around the world. Yes, we still have limited access to local produce. I mean, that's changed a lot in itself, but it's still not a big part of a restaurant's menu versus other countries. But we've certainly got a restaurant scene that I think we can shout about and be proud of now.
And what about the health and wellness scene?
That's changing a lot. But okay, we have 2 things here. When it comes to health and wellness, I think you have healthy dining, and then you have the other aspect of sustainable dining. So when it comes to sustainability, I think Boca is the one restaurant that has really led that over the last few years, and has been a game changer for others to follow. You also have sort of chefs like Russell at Sofitel Obelisk that are leading that movement. Hilton with Emma Banks. Sort of outside the UAE, you have Six Senses, Ziggy Bay, very much around sustainability of produce and minimizing food wastage. So that's one aspect of it. Again, it is changing. We obviously had COP28 here as well, which I think drummed in that message even more. But there's still a long way to go there, partly because of where we are located.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in and ask you, I mean, it seems like from my end where I get the press releases, and I know, for example, Emirates Palace, they're growing their own produce. They have their own beehives. They're making their own honey. Seems to be a trend, but how much is it really?
Okay, there are a lot of it that is just paying lip service to it. And it's about adding a few local ingredients onto the menu and calling themselves sustainable. But that's not really sustainable. For it to work, you need to look at the Boca model where it's firmly embedded in the strategy. So everything they do is being monitored and judged on a sustainability basis. I mean, the GM of the restaurant, the GM co-founder, co-owner of the restaurant now calls himself the Chief Sustainability Officer, because everything that he does, Omar, is very much has to tick that sustainability box. So they've almost moved away from this Spanish/Mediterranean concept to a sustainability concept. So there's only a handful really that are embracing it from A to Z, but it's still a lot more than it was a few years ago. Now, we also then have, going back to your first question, the healthy aspect. Now, as someone, I'm very health conscious, always have been, but needless to say, struggling when you have to eat out so much. So I've had my own sort of ups and downs with health and gut issues over the years, but I think this is a real challenge here, and something that no one has really picked up on yet. And I know we've talked about this before, but to eat out healthily is a real challenge. It's easier if you're eating out at high-end Mediterranean Greek-style concepts. And I don't just say this being half Greek Cypriot, but the key thing here is seed oils. That for me is the number one red flag. And it's really about eliminating seed oils. We don't know when we're eating out whether they're using extra virgin olive oil or they're using these sort of toxic seed oils. So that's a real challenge. I'm not sure if that's going to change. I would love to see an ingredient list for every single dish on the menu. I mean, we do have some, and I think you have more in Abu Dhabi, that indicate calories. I mean, actually, I was astounded. It's about a year ago when I went to a very well-known sort of modern Japanese casual concept. And the dishes that I was eating, the calorie content that I thought was healthy, the calorie content was huge. And yes, calories are not the be-all and end-all, but you realize how much sugar is added into a lot of food, especially in Asian food. And I love Asian food.
Yeah, you're thinking sugar's added in maybe in some sauces, and you're thinking sport or dessert. I'm really happy to hear you bring up the seed oil issue. So many people aren't aware of this. And I think people aren't aware that almost every healthy place they're eating at use seed oils. And when you start asking questions, there's what would you say? Like, what percentage of even the healthy deliveries are using olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil? It's like minuscule.
Yeah. I try, when it comes to deliveries, I mean, I do order deliveries. We're all guilty of it, but I try not to, because that's where we have zero control. because you can't really ask any questions in particular. And I would never, ever order from a dark kitchen or a cloud kitchen. So if you're going on Deliveroo, I check where they are based. And you can tell immediately if it's coming from a cloud, if it's somewhere that's new to you that you haven't ordered from before. So, because again, the hygiene levels are questionable there, and obviously, the ingredients that they're using as well. So it becomes a real challenge with deliveries. But even when you're eating out, I mean, you must have seen, I don't ask the question about seed oils because no one knows what I'm talking about. And I also have to take into account, especially when I'm in review mode, that it's unfair to judge restaurants on their use of seed oils. I'm judging them on a number of other criteria. They're not being judged on how healthy their menu is. So there's only so much that I will ask along that subject.
I do sometimes say that I'm allergic.
Okay, and what do they say?
Because now way more people are asking, are there any allergies? And I'm like, well, since you asked, I'm allergic to, canola oil or whatever. Can you cook whatever with butter or olive oil? And that's been pretty receptive.
Okay.
You frame it as an allergy because when you think about it, if you have gut issues, you really do have an allergy. Like everyone has an allergy to seed oils, but if you have gut issues, you're really not going to feel good if you eat a meal.
And also, I guess it's about eliminating the deep fried items, which naturally would not be cooked in a healthy oil.
You can't ask someone to deep fry your food.
It's those bits. Unfortunately, the French fries are out of the window.
Yeah, they are. Well, that's so interesting. And so how else do you navigate your gut issues when you're eating out all the time?
Well, I've got lots of little hacks, actually. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Glucose Goddess on Instagram and her 5 hacks. I have been known to go out with my little apple cider vinegar in bottles and pour it in my water before, especially if I know I'm going to have a carb heavy meal, because that's the other thing. I can't say, okay, I'm just going to follow the low carb diet that I follow at home when I need to taste the bread. And sometimes the bread will be the highlight of the meal. So I do, it's about balance. I'm very, very strict at home. I eat very clean, very low carb. Actually, I order Hello Chef during the week, or I tend to most weeks, not every week, which is, as you probably know, it's a recipe delivery service where you cook your own food. But I have to say, even there, they say use your vegetable oil that you have at home. Obviously, I won't use that. I'll use my extra virgin cold pressed oil that I have, and proper butter, not Lurpak. So it's about balance at the end of the day. But I do cheat when I'm out. But I seem to have found a good balance, I would say. I mean, I go through phases. In the summer is my sort of detox period when it's quieter, and then now obviously it's a lot harder to be as strict as I am in the summer when it's quieter.
What are restaurants still messing up that you just shake your head when you go out and think, like, why are people still doing this?
Okay, it's actually service, to be honest, Marie. My pet peeve here, and I've been talking about this from day one, and I come from a background, my parents were hoteliers. I was kind of brought up in amazing 5-star hotels around the world. I've been dining out from a young age. So yes, I am quite spoilt when it comes to that. But, the one thing that is a real pet peeve, and perhaps it's a first world problem, but it's extremely rude, is when the waiter removes your plate before the other person has finished. Happens to me all the time because I'm a fast eater. I don't like food getting cold unless it's sushi or sashimi or a salad. But it still, even in the most expensive high-end restaurants here, it happens all the time. And, it's lack of good training. And lack of perhaps a good GM there to monitor that. So that's my pet peeves tend to be service related here.
Me too. Were you a server? Were you ever a server?
Yeah, just part-time. Yes. Yeah. My dad, I have to work in the hotels. My dad was a GM at, but he never paid me.
Ah. You know, one thing I can never get over, and it's universal, even the nicest restaurants, when they take your food away, that's it. There's to get the bill, I have to create a diversion.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
It's like they say it's like they train all the staff and say, don't look at that table. They've finished eating. Do not make eye contact. Do not bring them the bill. I mean, you're staring, you're doing, why is this? Do you have any idea why this is?
They want you there to spend more, unless it's one of the restaurants where you're only allowed the table for 1.5 or 2 hours. Then they're very quick to come over to you and say, and bring over the bill or take your last orders because they've got another group coming in. But essentially, it's an upscale. I mean, this is morphs into another pet peeve. It's to upsell. They essentially want you to be able to order a drink or whatever, dessert, etc. But upselling is a big thing for me here as well. When I normally go into a restaurant, even when I'm not reviewing, having viewed the menu online, going back to eating healthily around a menu as well. And I know pretty much exactly what I want. I might ask 1 or 2 questions if I'm in between 2 items, but they will still then start to upsell. Like in a Japanese restaurant, it's the idamame. The moment I get that, I actually purposely will not order it because I get so annoyed with those questions. But I'm the minority. On the majority of people, that will work, and they will sell that idamame. Yeah.
I had a server yesterday in a lovely place in Abu Dhabi, and I said, "Oh, that soup looks good, but I also want to get the toast. Is that too much?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "Why don't you eat the toast, and then if you're still hungry, you can get the soup." And I thought, I wish you would come everywhere with me.
Yes. Yeah.
But it was really thoughtful service. It was very thoughtful service. She has obviously been trained to, she's got common sense, but she's also been trained that we want to stuff people full of food. You want to have them leaving feeling good, right? Like,
and you do get that. There are a handful of restaurants that will say to you, "Oh, actually, I think you've ordered too much," especially in these sort of sharing style concepts where it's not strictly, and it's smaller plates. They're like, "Oh no, I think that's too much, actually." Yeah.
What about restaurants that say that they're healthy or wellness, but they just don't get it right? I feel like there's quite a lot of these because I'll seek them out because I like that kind of food. I like eating paleo and I like eating in a certain way. And then you go and it's like, oh, this is just so wrong. Do you ever come across those?
Yeah, it is. I think, a lot of, like with packaging, a lot of restaurants jump on the sort of healthy bandwagon. And I think it's a real challenge here in comparison to other cities. That's why I think we have a long way to go. But I think you also need some regulations in place for restaurants to be able to label themselves as healthy. Because I believe, like, for instance, the calorie thing, I think it's mandatory, I believe, in Abu Dhabi, but not Dubai. Is that correct? Yeah.
I think so.
So, that's certainly an avenue to go under. I mean, I'm always very skeptical when I see press releases that come in that say healthy, and then you see and then you ask to see a menu, because in a lot of cases, the menu's not often online, which is also a big frustration. It's becoming less and less now. I think most restaurants now have accepted the fact that if you don't share your menu online, we will find it online somewhere, or you just take photos of it. So there's no need to fuss around the fact that the competition might pick up the menu, because at the end of the day, if the competition wants to know what their menu is, they can easily get hold of it. It's a bit like Instagram. A lot of people in the beginning were reluctant to share photos of their food because they didn't want the competition to sort of rip off their dishes in the early days.
I didn't know that.
has now changed. I mean, now people use Instagram as a menu in terms of going into a restaurant and ordering from what they've seen on Instagram.
Okay, how about the arrival of the Michelin system? I guess it's been a year or two now.
We've had in Dubai, we've had 2 editions of Michelin, and Abu Dhabi's just had its second one, as you know. I think it's great from a global perspective, along with 50 Best as well. I mean, they're the 2 sort of big ones. You have Gold Milo as well, but that's not really as mainstream as Michelin. And so I think a tourist coming here will look towards those guides when they're deciding where to go and eat. But from a local perspective, not really. I don't think it's had any impact whatsoever. I think residents here know where to eat or know who to follow. They don't need a Michelin guide or a 50 Best guide to tell them. And frankly, when you look at those lists, they're so tourism board driven, especially the Michelin list. When you look at it, the 1 and 2 stars are all in the big 5-star hotels here. Whereas the really interesting part of the Michelin guide, and I think we see that with the Abu Dhabi one as well, is the big gourmands. And that's where you see the local independent owner operated homegrown concepts replicated.
Okay. You, after October 7th, you sprung into action so quickly to highlight Palestinian restaurants. I feel like it was just so, you did it so fast and so well. And are you still doing that? And how are you sort of trying to support?
Yeah. Oh, thank you for saying that. Actually, I felt I was a little bit slow.
No, this is the thing. When you're doing something, it's never fast enough. But to me, she's one of the same as in COVID when people were just springing into action doing stuff. I thought they were so fast. But anyway, to me, it was like you did it immediately.
Yeah, no, for me, listen, I feel I've always been very pro-humanity, pro-Palestine. I am actually half Cypriot, half Greek Cypriot. We're actually refugees because my hometown was occupied by the Turks in 1974. So I know what it feels like to come from an occupied country. But as we all do, I have a lot of Palestinian friends here, and I felt very, very strongly about that narrative. So I decided to support in the only way that I could. And that was to really highlight not just Palestinian restaurants here, but Palestinian owned restaurants, because these are the restaurants that are funded by people that have family in Palestine. Everyone knows someone that is directly affected by what is going on. So that's when I started the campaign, through my newsletter, through my website, through social media. It's something that I'm continuing to do as I discover new places, because it's very hard to suddenly pull together a list in a week of every Palestinian owned restaurant here, and I'm discovering new ones. New people are giving me heads up on other restaurants here. So it's ongoing, but it's also helped me personally discover new restaurants as well that I didn't even know existed. So it's been an amazing journey. I mean, it's sad to see that obviously the humanitarian crisis is still ongoing there. But and I think something that I will continue for as long as it takes, really. I think I feel very strongly that as a non-Arab, we have to play our part. Yeah. Because sadly, if you are an Arab, you are deemed to be biased. Mm-hmm. So I think it's very important that as residents here, as a non-Arab, we do as much as we can or as little as we can to support in some way or another.
Okay. And I just have to ask you, what are your currently favorite restaurants right now? Where are you loving? Are you able to say?
It's so hard. I get asked that all the time, Ann Marie, and I feel like if I have stepchildren, but I don't have my own children from birth, and I feel it will be like choosing your favorite child. So that's why I put together this annual guide, because it really depends on firstly here, licensed versus unlicensed, i.e. alcohol without alcohol, whether it's cuisine, what side of town, we have traffic here, whether it's date night, whether it's with friends, what kind of experience are you looking for, casual versus upmarket. So it's very, very hard to pinpoint one, but one that I will pick because it gives me a taste of home is Mythos in JLT. It's Greek, it's not Cypriot, but the original one in JLT. I feel that's somewhere that I head back to for sort of comfort food and for a taste.
I've actually been there, and it's delicious and lovely inside too. So.
Do you know, there's one restaurant that I used to before. So I've been producing this guide for 8 years. Actually, next year will be the 9th edition. But in my sort of early FooDiva days, there was a restaurant here. I can't remember if you ever went. Can't remember if you ever went to it, called Kubara, and it was modern Middle Eastern. It was in Wafi, where Planet Hollywood used to be, and next to Raffles. But it was, the best way to describe it is a Middle Eastern version of Zuma. And it was fabulous, but sadly, wrong location, and it died. Now, I hear rumors it might be coming back again. So maybe if it comes back again and it's just as good, that might become my favorite place. Because I also feel you have to embrace food from this region. Our Fali Bistro, I think, really deserves it's number 1 on the 50 best list. The Syrian Brothers, they're doing something different. It's unlicensed, yet I feel it's very cutting edge in their approach to this region. So definitely, if you've got one night in Dubai, then go there, 100%.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Samantha. FooDiva.net is where everything is located, and we can find everything from you from there, right? And all your best. So we'll keep eating out because it's helping us all.
Oh dear, I will do. To the detriment of my health, I shall continue. I do love it though. I love dining out, I have to say. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne Marie.